Hi, and welcome to Leadership Trailblazers. I'm Lois Burton, your host. I'm an executive coach and leadership development specialist. And I'm delighted today to welcome as my guest, Phil Jones, MBE, who's the Managing Director of Brother UK and also a leadership conference speaker. So thank you very much, Phil, for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Lois. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So, as you know, the premise of Leadership Trailblazers is that the way that we led yesterday won't lead us into tomorrow. And really thinking about what are the things we need to maintain as leaders that are foundational and still really important. But what are the things that we need to change and evolve as we move forward? So I'm going to ask you, first of all, what are the qualities that you think a leader needs to have in order to succeed in today's world?
Well, that's a really huge question. And I just want to draw on something that I recently did when looking at my own succession and thinking, okay, well, if I look at the skills and competencies that you need to be the managing director of a large technology multinational, I'm up to 50 already on that list, because it ranges from everything, from whether, all the competencies around PR, strategic planning, risk management, CSR, governance, legal, contract, marketing, sales management. It's a huge list. So at a sort of a skill and competency level, that you need a long list of those things. But I summarized it recently that in a conversation with a chap called Alistair McCaw, who is a very well known author from America, who writes a lot of books around peak performance for athletes, etc. And we had some lunch when he visited over here in Manchester recently. And what I described to Alistair is that I think right now we have to adopt a new mindset. And when I say new, I don't mean N-E-W, new. What I mean is new, N-U. And what that means is navigating uncertainty. That right now, if you are and have been running a business for whether it be the last few months or the last few years, you will have had to adopt a mindset around how to navigate uncertainty. And if we think back, I've been running Brother for 13 years now. So I can go right the way back to things like the financial crisis in 2008. But if we think of the last, let's say 6 years, Lois, when we've had to deal with wars, we've had to deal with Brexit, we've had to deal with the pandemic, we've had to deal with obviously the new presidency in America, tariffs, and we've had all sorts of supply chain issues. It really has been an exhausting time for anybody that leads, because you're dealing with so many problems. That asked recently about what the number one problem on my desk was, my response was the number of problems on my desk was my response to the number one problem. I've never experienced a time like it, Lois, in all my years leading this organization. I've never experienced a time like it. So in my opinion, right now, navigating uncertainty is where it's at. And what do we mean by that? Well, of course, there's a strategic piece to that, isn't there? Of course there is. How do we make sure our companies can survive and that we've got good going concern? But then we've got our people within the companies also facing this very uncertain environment. And they're coming to our workplaces or spaces, kind of looking at you to sort of go, help us figure this out. So I think there's a lot of demands right now on leaders to effectively lead, but also to educate, motivate, support, and provide, I guess, as much certainty in a period of uncertainty as we can.
I think that's really interesting, because I've actually been talking to a few people recently about that very topic, that your people are coming to you to kind of go, make it right, tell us what's going to come next. And actually, that's impossible to do because you don't know what's going to come next. So in that space, Phil, of providing as much certainty as you can, how do you handle that?
Right. So I have a monthly town hall with everybody at Brothers. So we call it everybody in the company comes in every Tuesday. So we call that Altogether Tuesday, Lois. So of course we've got hybrid working and we have compressed hours hybrid working as well. So getting into very much a synchronous, asynchronous environment now about how we work and communicate with each other. But one thing I did want was at least one day a week where we can all be in a synchronous environment where we're all together. We can have quick chats, overhear things, we can reconnect as people and all of those things. But on the first of the Tuesdays of each month, then I do a short town hall. And there I will give just a very short and dynamic briefing about what I'm seeing. How do I view the world right now? Because there could have been yet another news announcement, the day before, where everyone's suddenly going, "Oh no! Like who could have foreseen the invasion of Iran just a few weeks ago?" And all of a sudden, next thing you know, here it is. And so I use those opportunities to, I think, talk as honestly and pragmatically to our people about what I think that means for us. So if we've seen that, what does it mean? Well, it might mean that we're going to have an even more uncertain trading environment. It could mean supply chain disruption. It could mean all of those things. And I think there's an honesty within that, rather than just going, we'll be all right, sort of having that toxic positivity that nobody believes. But I try and bring a very pragmatic explanation to people so that they just understand where we sit relevant to it all. So my last town hall, I shared a pestle analysis, which was, something that we prepared to sort of go, okay, what's the lens we're viewing the world through at the moment? It looks a bit like that. So what that means is clearly we've got a very uncertain trading environment for the new financial year. But what I think this gives people is I use a term called the dot on the horizon. And DOT is a mnemonic or an acronym for direction of travel. So even though we have all of these things coming, possible headwinds and things we're going to have to try and navigate through or around, the general direction that we're trying to get to, that hasn't changed. We're still trying to do more of that than we are that, if that makes sense. And so people are okay with that, and I think become more settled with that. I think where a lot of organizations and leaders perhaps get it wrong is we go into blind panic, we go into fixing mode, we go into deep operational mode. And as a result, you get millions of priorities pinging out, and everyone becomes deeply immersed in sort of short-term fixing. I'm trying to give people way more certainty to say, don't worry, we've got this. And if we remain a team, if we remain nimble, and if we communicate with each other, and if we make sure that we understand the things that are going around our environment, then we are more than prepared to navigate through it, because these things are cyclical. They come around in big cycles, whether it be wars, economic, recessions, depressions, everything is cyclical. And so we've got this, we've been here before, and we'll be okay.
And that, again, that is so interesting, because I was speaking to another of my guests, and she was saying that it's so important to keep people engaged with that ultimate. You're calling it, the direction of travel. She was calling it the vision and the mission. But it is that ultimate purpose that we're still looking here, even though we've got to navigate all the uncertainty to get us there.
Yeah. So years ago, I had a cartoonist prepare me lots of cartoons, Lois. And I use those to explain things to people. So the cartoon of Brother is like a massive aircraft carrier, effectively, you can imagine. That's almost to some degree what we are. We are, a great big corporate. So when we're in the stormy sea, we're a big boat, a really big one. And I've got a version of that cartoon, which is that aircraft carrier in stormy seas. And so as a result, we can say to ourselves that, okay, this is just part of it. Even cruise liners are built to go through, stormy places like the Bay of Biscay. So we've still got swimming pools and all of those things, but actually in the bigger picture, it's going to be okay. And I think there's a term I read recently about mental saturation. And I think if we think of our people, if you think of yourself, in your life today, we are mentally saturated, whether that be through all the various data messaging platforms we're getting through social media, and then through traditional media. We are saturated with the moment that every time we switch something on, now what you see on the television every day, a new cost of living crisis caused by the latest conflict in Iran, which then tops the mental saturation up for people to go, oh, not another thing. I can't cope. So we have to understand that our people are mentally saturated right now. If we're trying to get peak performance out of people, whatever they've got left to give, then it's our job as leaders to try and reduce, I guess, that saturation that they're feeling and try and normalize some of it so that work doesn't feel part of that mental saturation.
And again, I think that's so important because exactly what you said about the mental saturation. I think we all feel it. I certainly do. And if it just becomes too much, you're going to get that tipping point where people fall off the edge. Just to move on slightly, I know that you've had a model of leadership around we've talked about this before, and this is about personal leadership. And so what do you see in terms of that personal leadership? Because if you're doing that for everybody else, what are the things that you need to be paying attention to as a leader in order to be able to do that for everyone else?
Oh, yes. So years ago, I was very, very lucky to work with some people in the military, some of the leadership effectively. I learned some of their principles around, how they go to war and all those sorts of things. And one of the terms I absolutely loved was from a Apache helicopter pilot that spoke to me about situational awareness. And situational awareness, obviously, is something that almost any pilot understands. What that means is, how are you keeping an eye on all the dials at all times? Because if we all watch those TV shows like Aircraft Crash Disaster, quite often it's human error that causes these things because somebody is just relying on their bias too much or their own judgment too much. And they've forgotten to look at what's actually the dials are telling them. And so I think for us right now, people leading businesses, it's actually what situational awareness are you applying to yourself each day? What's your checklist? How did I sleep last night? What sort of mood am I in? What am I doing in order to be the best? What I can bring today is the best that I can bring. And I think there's a discussion that sometimes you can only bring 100% of your 80%. If that makes sense, because we're human beings too. I'm a person outside of work, and I've got a family and all of these things and problems outside of work. So it's always about, I think, having a situational awareness sense check of oneself at the moment. And if I look at my own situational awareness, go, my goodness, we have so many problems and difficulties that we're now trying to immediately manage as a result of the conflict in Iran. So we're now thinking of basic things like supply chain integrity. We're already having surcharges applied to us by our hauliers. Just even people coming to work are experiencing the cost of a tank of petrol being more. And so there's a new focus on, well, what's our cost of living increase going to be? And are we going to be back in this environment where interest rates are going to be high and food inflation is going to be 15, 20%. So you've got all of that suddenly going on again. So what does that mean? It means probably I, as a person, if you're the person on top of the organization, will probably feel pretty stressed by that. Because, of course, everyone's looking at you and you've got all these operational things to sort out. So I use something called my desk policy, diet, exercise, sleep, and kindness to self. So the K bit of that is very, very important, which is give yourself a break. Do not think you can operate at 100 miles an hour 100% of the time. Make sure that you're sleeping well, giving your body and your brain the time to recover, process things, take a bit more exercise, walk a bit more. I've done more walking meetings in the last couple of months than in ages, because I've found myself in the day, being bombarded with information coming through on various different conflicting factors. And we're doing a lot of change at the same time. So a walking meeting sort of re-energizes me and re-energizes the other person just for an hour. So it's finding, I guess, through your situation awareness, the ability to understand self, to then go, okay, well, what do I need to do to make sure that I continue to make good decisions? That's what people want right now. Please make and continue to make good decisions that make sure that serve us for the long term. Don't panic. Don't start deciding things, under stress or duress or pressure. And that's the worst possible place you can be when you're running a business of any size, is making decisions under unnecessary pressure, particularly if you're placing that pressure on yourself, Lois. And you can ease that pressure, of course you can, by caring for yourself in perhaps self-caring. Because when you're leading a big organization, not many people are necessarily caring for you. You're doing the majority of the caring.
Yeah. And I mean, I talk about this with my one-to-one coachees all the time, because quite often, when they come into their coaching session, that's the place where they can talk about them as opposed to talking about others. But what you're saying there, Phil, that there's two things. A, it requires you giving yourself permission to care for yourself. And one of the things that I see many leaders struggle with is giving themselves permission to do that. And also holding the boundaries so that you can protect some time. If you're going to do a walking meeting, that somebody else doesn't come in from left field and say, oh, I need you on a Teams call or a Zoom call. So can you just say a little bit about how you manage those boundaries? Because I think it's a really important area for many people.
Yes, of course. So let me first start it off with, I think, a saying that sometimes we need to hear. And it's by a spiritual author, a guy called Ram Dass, who was a really big person in the whole spiritual movement in the 70s and 80s particularly. And I've read a lot of his stuff. And one thing that I really loved that he said is this simple sentence. I myself stand in need of the arms of my own kindness.
That's a fabulous phrase.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Because you're caring for other people so much that you forget to care for yourself. So that one is always a reminder to me. It's up here to sort of go, what am I doing for myself within all of this? However, so look, I have a lot of demands on my time. Of course I do. And particularly at times of peak stress. So my busiest time of the year is between February and May. If I look at the seasonality of my whole year. So the fact that I even know that means I've already done a bit of work on it. So I can look back over all my 10, 12 years and I can go, right, from a seasonality perspective, February, because we're starting to create budgets for the new financial year, March for year end, April for statutory accounts and New Year kickoff. Start breathing again in May. So planning, I think, is one of the really big things that we can all do when we're leading, right? So one thing that I definitely do is I horizon a lot, Lois. I horizon a lot. I look forward. I'll get my diary And quite often, I know this will sound very old school, but I will actually print my diary out and lay it out in front of me for 3 months ahead. So I can visually see it. So I've now zoomed out on my entire diary. Where am I? What am I doing? What am I doing at weekends? Where am I out late on a dinner? Where am I doing this? What meetings are happening here? And actually, by doing it in that way, you get this really deep insight to go, right, that week, I definitely need a day that I'm blocking out, which is going to be nothing but catching up, breathing space, recovering from the peak. And equally, I might book a day off and go, I'm going to be really under the cosh during that time. I'm going to take a long weekend that particular week. I'll take a long weekend and just give myself that little bit of time. So I think that is part of a winning pattern of self-awareness and self-care is just not allowing your diary to be taken over by the demands of everything. And also making sure that even in this environment where, as leaders, of course, what you want to do is add all your value by problem fixing and things like that, it's actually the number one time you should be coaching your people. Not just problem solving. You should be coaching people through the problem solving process to say, okay, all right, well, I've been through these cycles a few times before because I'm a little bit older than you. And the way that, how would we address this problem? So come on, let's try and work on this to try and address this. Because when I'm not here, you're probably going to be faced with a problem like this because these things are cyclical. So also having time in your diary for those sorts of things so that you're not just buried all the time. So on previous sort of talks and stuff that I've done, I talk really about prioritizing my diary so it's split between 3 things: out, on, or in. So about a third between those 2 things. A third of the time is outside, visiting customers, going to conferences, developing, listening to a perspective from a futurist about where the world might be going. So out, that gives you that energy and that measuring point to say what is actually happening in the outside world. Because if you start going, you need outside in thinking, not inside out. So if you're going out more, you do come back with that, right, need to do something about this. You see more, experience more, and you have interesting conversations with people. So when you come back, you've got your third on. So that's the strategic side, right? Okay, what am I doing now to think about the things that I've learned? Where are we at with regards to our own strategy? How are we performing? Do we need to course correct? Do we need to do anything, change anything, etc.? And then if you do, then that's the in bit. The in is the people and your culture. So once you get that bit, and if you're going to make a big change, for example, then you need to make sure you are available to win the hearts and minds, to have that discussion with people about why is it that we're changing. So what I've realized is that very, very simple operating model, which I've used for my diary for over a decade now, it gives people around you a lot of confidence that the things that you're asking for, if it means change, are well informed.
Yes.
You don't sort of go on holiday, read a book, come back in and go, we're about to rip up everything and we're now going to be this. What people realize is you bringing things back that are considered, well thought out, informed by the market or informed by a customer behavior or informed by a technology trend. And therefore, in order for us to stay relevant and be sustainable over the long term, we're going to have to do this. And it might feel uncomfortable, but this is the reason why we're doing it. And if you don't spend enough time to explain to people why we're doing things, you meet all of that cultural iceberg stuff, don't we, on change management and all that stuff, all the stuff that sits below the surface, which nobody wants because it slows you down.
And I guess, when I think about what you said at the beginning of our conversation about right now, the importance of navigating uncertainty, the fact that you've got some stuff that ground you, and then other people know, as you say, that things have been thought through, that they're well considered. That again helps you, but also helps others to navigate that uncertainty.
It really does, Lois, because let's just take a moment to go, right, if you were in the American administration at the moment and everybody's on tenterhooks, wondering what's going to be said when the president wakes up, and nobody knows, and it could be left, it could be right, it could be backwards, it could be forwards. Everybody is in this heightened state of awareness of something bad's going to happen. It is that what next, which then that triggers a whole series of reactions in our brain, doesn't it? Worst case scenarios. Our brain then carries on. We start getting more cortisol in our bodies, and next thing you know, we're all feeling stressed, and we're talking to our friends about it, and we end up in a cycle of feeling like kind of the world's going to end. and I think that from the people that have been around to me and the people that join the company, that the more that you explain, even though it might be difficult, let's just treat people as adults. And the more that you can explain, the more rational that you are, and the more that people believe that actually nothing really happens without good thought, then people tend to invest more in making whatever change it is you're about to make happen. And as long as you also are giving space for people to ask questions, to challenge it. Sometimes it's JDI stuff, just do it. Of course it is, because it might be coming from Japan, where our head office is, and it's kind of like, well, whether you like it or you don't, we're putting this new system in, and it's it's a global supply chain system, so we've all got to do it. So there isn't actually a debate to be had about whether you like it or you don't like it. It's happening. But you've got to explain why global supply chain systems are important. That's where your start is on that change, is actually the reason why we want to do this is because in the bigger picture, actually, with all this global supply chain uncertainty, the company wants to be able to pivot faster if this happens again. So if we have another pandemic, or if there's another war or something like this, we need to be able to move quicker than we did the last time. So then you are a learning organization, and you can feed that back to say, do you remember when we had all these supply chain problems because we didn't have a system like this? Well, this now solves that. And they go, aha, okay. So then the penny drops. Okay, and all right, I can work with this. And then by having that, this makes us a more sustainable organization in the long term. Remember, that's what we're trying to do in the bigger picture, is build an entity here, because this place has been going in the UK, Brother UK, since 1968. Brother's been going since 1908. So, it's managed to endure over 100 years ways to be a relevant organization. And the only way it's done that is by continuing to listen to its customers and, more importantly, face its uncomfortable truths. And when you can face those uncomfortable truths, then actually you can keep improving.
Would you be willing to share, Phil, one of those uncomfortable truths that you have had to face for Brother, for yourself in the last few months?
Yeah, I mean, I think a really good example might be actually one that all printer vendors had to go through, which was post-pandemic. The people's uses of printers in offices declined quite significantly in a short period of time. So the industry could almost concretely forecast that print was declining in offices at a negative rate of about 3% per year. Okay, we can all live with that. We can all plan for that. We can all, we can work with that horizon. Post-pandemic, of course, suddenly the center of gravity shifted, didn't it, between employer and employee? That suddenly all the power wasn't suddenly with the employers of, come to the office every day, because people had created new habits. And so as a result of that, we then saw pretty much the rollout of hybrid working across many organizations, of course, public and private. And what that meant is more digitized processes, which were more rapidly digitized than perhaps people were thinking of initially. And as a result, the global print volumes for, let's say, pieces of A4 paper reduced by about 15% overnight.
Yeah.
So when you've got a business model that's saying, well, we're planning for about 3 and it goes negative 15, then that's quite a lot of money. It's quite a lot of money. And, that's everyone can see that in the numbers. And of course, what that does is make people worry. Oh no, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my job? And it's kind of like, so that was an uncomfortable truth that it was, you've got to face that, which is, my explanation to our people here is we've gone over effectively now the line which says we're not going back. So in physics, they call this the event horizon. I don't know if you know that term with black holes. Yeah, so like once you've got over the event horizon, which is the line, there's no going back. You cannot escape the gravity of a black hole. And that's what I said to my people here is that, we've gone over the event horizon now with, in my opinion, hybrid working, because people don't want to go back. And as much as a business might rally and cry and bang the table and do the callbacks and all of those sorts of things, people have mentally moved on from that moment. And so they've now got a basic expectation that hybrid working forms part of general working, for effectively people in administrative roles, marketing, and so on. And now actually people are asking for more. And of course, we're seeing legislation in the UK with things like flexible working, compressed working hours, all of those things where people are expecting their direction of travel and work to be doing less work or having more time in their life, perhaps a better way to put it, to prioritize themselves. So for me, the uncomfortable truth is explaining to you people, there's no going back from this moment. Let's not sit here and think that sales are going to increase all of a sudden because everyone's going to go back to work. It's gone. That time has gone. So let's now take that truth and work with that truth and configure the business around that truth. And that is our operating model for the future. So we took a big step down. I think every vendor did. But now actually that's stabilized and we're back to the curve that existed before again, Lois. It's at a lower level than it used to be.
And thank you for sharing that, Phil, because I think that people being willing to face the uncomfortable truths is so, so important. And that event horizon, because I do still work with people who are yearning to go backwards. And as you said, that is not going to happen. And you talked about the self-care as well, and and mental resilience around being able to go, okay, that's gone. Right, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Is so important. But if people are in that heightened state of anxiety, then, sometimes that's really difficult, because the easiest thing to think is, well, if we go back, it'll all be okay.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? You've talked about the navigating uncertainty, but how do you now think that leadership is evolving for the future? What do you think is going to be really important for leaders in the future?
Yeah, well, obviously linked to navigating uncertainty, I think we've got so many things going on at the same time, Lois. So one of the big things is this central gravity shift about employees and work-life blend, and what the demands are of employers, and what legislative things are coming in. That's kind of like a really interesting thing. But layer into that generational change, and I was talking about the big shift from baby boomers to X's and the Y's and the Z's and all. I could see that coming down the pipe as being expectations are totally different. People don't view work in the same way that they did in people in their 50s now. very different expectations for how you built a career and how you went up in how you created more status, how you created more income. There's a very, very different view about that now when you look at generations. And I predicted some generational friction that we would have to deal with many, many years ago of the gap between expectation and kind of what was. So this sort of almost like I've only got to this job after 20 years of hard graft, and going up the ladder and all this sort of stuff. Whereas you've got newer generations coming in sort of expecting to sort of be doing the job that you're doing after 2 or 3 years. And it's not to make sure that you are managing both of those things whilst those both cohorts are coexisting and seeing value in each other. So I think for leaders, what you've got going on there is you've got all of these societal things going on, all these societal factors, like this generational change, like the different type of work expectation. Then you've got all these external factors going on. And so the question then is actually, okay, well, what do you need to lead? Right now, what is it that you need to lead? So I have a little system that I self-invented, I'm sorry, and I call it correlative leadership. And I only caused it correlative because everyone else has used every other word in the dictionary about leadership, and I couldn't find one I liked. And I liked correlative because it's about the relationship between things, what correlates with each other. And what that means is there's sort of 4 pillars to it, which is physical, emotional, strategic, and digital. So physical, that means you've got to have, take care of yourself. You've got to take care of people, but it also means your workspace, your physical workspace. How are you designing it? So how are you making it such that when people come to work, they have a good time? Biophilic designs come in a quite a big way in a lot of offices, having nature inside, all of those sorts of things. So people's expectations of their physical spaces has actually changed. So physical covers a few things, but it also covers, in my opinion, neuroscience, which is obviously the study of the spine. And you also understand in the role of neuroscience in your workforce about the role of things like cortisol and what happens when your organization becomes stressed and all those sorts of things. So you've got to have, that's the physical pillar. Emotional pillar, of course, is the standard, been around for 50 years, emotional intelligence. And I'm still staggered, I think is the only word, Lois, at the levels of emotional intelligence that some people still lack.
You and me both, Phil. Yeah.
It's kind of like you're still seeing people who have got no self-awareness, butting heads, ego, all of this sort of stuff, status, and not being able to see beyond or have any sort of metacognition about their ability to even think about their own thoughts. So this can create lots of issues. So emotional intelligence, in my opinion, is very, very key. And I split that down, really. I talk about mastery. So mastery of subject matter is, look, be a good professional, of course, of your subject matter, but master yourself too, please, i.e. be a really, really educated person who's worked on their personal growth to understand that not every relationship is going to be consistent with the way you view the world, for example, and how do you overcome conflict, and why does conflict occur, and why do you flare up when you flare up? Do you understand your reactions? Do you standard stuff? But it's still, I'm guessing, probably why you do so well, Lois, is that you're still having to try and teach people but this topic. So
it's still a gap. Yeah,
fill the gap. So S can be one of two things, actually. Depends what audience I'm in front of. For some people, I call it spiritual, which some people find that quite difficult to swallow. And what I mean by that is how are you sort of connected at something beyond a physical business? I.e., how do you bring to bear discussions with people that go beyond just sort of the here and now? So a good example would be if someone is turning 50 years old, and I've been through so many times, even with senior people, and they're having a bit of a life crisis. You need to be able to sit in front of them and go, what's this all about? And they go, I don't know who I am. Okay, so you're faced with that statement. All right, that takes quite a deep level of conversation to navigate somebody through that, to get back to how do we rediscover who we are? I put that sort of more in that spiritual box, because it's not really, go and speak to HR. It's not really, go and look at a manual somewhere. This is about, okay, me and you are together now. Let's be human together. And it's about that deep, deep connection that you might have with somebody to help them. So it can be spiritual, but obviously it can also be interchanged with strategic, good decision making. And how do you use frameworks and tools and other things available to you to make good decisions, to navigate you through? So that's, I think, key. And then the last one is digital. And that is, how are you making sure that you are digitally educated to stay relevant, to lead your organization? That can be anything right the way through to how are you adopting AI in your personal life? How are you adopting AI as an executive? How are you thinking about creating content on social channels in order that do work for you? And a good example of that might be I've done quite a lot of posting on LinkedIn and places like that over the years, and that puts you in a place where almost to some degree, when people are coming here, they're coming here because they might have seen one of those posts for interview, Lois. They go, oh yeah, I really like what the leader of that company says, or that they come across in a way that resonates with me. So it's sort of almost, you've got to be building that digital capability in your own life. That's either a social profile or education on digital tools, I think, to stay relevant. So that's my little correlative leadership strip is across those four major topics.
Yeah, I really like that, Phil. And I think it is interesting and actually really important that you've put that spiritual piece in there, because again, that connects to values, it connects to beliefs, it connects to our sense of being part of a wider world, and whatever form that may take. And I think that is really important. And I just want to ask you one question, which is on that generational shift, because I've been seeing a few things, and I've no evidence to back this up, just what I've read, that young people are starting to move back to more religious and spiritual beliefs, and I wonder whether you'd seen that within your business at all, whether there is that desire to connect to something bigger.
Yeah, I like you, I would say I have no concrete evidence I'm going to throw on the table today. I only have experiences of younger people that are in the organization. And one of the things that I know can really influence that is what I call life impacting experiences. So let's say they might have lost a parent, they might have a friend undergoing a cancer treatment, they may have been bullied on social media, whatever it might be. It leads them to question a lot about their life and how they're operating, and whether they're sort of being sucked into the sort of heroic individualism model, the toxic positivity model that effectively is running now in younger generations' lives, isn't it? Is the toxic positivity and the I'm an influencer, look at me, learn from me, subscribe to my system, which will make you like me, all of these sorts of things. What they're beginning to realize that a lot of that is built on fairly shaky foundations, and primarily making the influencer richer rather than you. So I think once you've been through some of those things, you do get a bit more of that search for meaning. And one thing I will certainly do is try and have those discussions. And also, I think another thing is that we should never underestimate the fact that a lot has changed culturally. And what I mean by that is not everyone has their parents at home anymore. parents are separated, so they might live with a father, they might live with a mother. So they might be lacking a mother figure or lacking a father figure. And so getting advice sometimes is very, very interesting. And I was at an event in Manchester a couple of weeks ago, and we had a futurist there called Tom Cheesewright, who's on BBC a lot, really fabulous guy. And
seen his stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about, the question is, well, where is our role now in the future of AI? In the future of AI now, which can answer every question, do everything. And what his answer was that we've got to rediscover that, humans can be very creative, and they also can communicate incredibly well, obviously using non-verbal based clues and things like that. And he also said, look, and I'm telling you now that the wisdom of the man with the silver hair and a blue suit will be of big value. And I was sat in a blue suit with silver hair, and I thought, well, that sounds good. That's going to be good for me. But what I realized is that actually sometimes some of the conversations that I have with people here, I can go into that depth. And in fact, before I've come onto the podcast today, I've learned that one of my colleagues had just lost his grandmother, and I just asked him to come to see me, and I hadn't realised that their relationship was almost like a mother and son rather than a grandchild and grandmother, and I could see that there was a conversation needed. We had a man in his 30s struggling with emotion, holding it all back. And so I just invested 45 minutes in that human moment. The tears flowed, and I could also relate experiences of losing my own mum a couple of years ago to make that moment very, very human for that person. And, availability in leadership is to things like that. Being there in those big moments in somebody's life where actually yesterday I signed the letter. HR back briefed me to say that he'd lost his grandmother, and I always send that person a letter from the company, to say I've heard this news and I'm so sorry. But seeing him today, I thought I want to talk to you, and I'd rather talk to you than send a letter. And the letter won't go now because the letter is actually relative to the conversation that I've had today, Lewis. I've had a level 10 conversation with this individual where we've absolutely just worked it through as two human beings, everything, to come to terms with that. Because that person leads a team in my organization.
Of course.
And so, he needs the care today. And me as a leader I can display some care towards him to say, look, okay, I don't need you to sort of box this off today. I don't need you to be, don't be tearful in the office, you'll upset everybody. It's like, no, quite the opposite. You need any time today to go and have a few tears anyway. You just go and take it because that's part of your process today. And so I think this is sort of narrowing this back to where we started, Lois, about qualities of leadership. This one I still stick in that box of what does it mean to be human? And people are still searching for meaning, I think, in a world which is just so content heavy, that actually finding meaning in amongst content at a human level is becoming quite a big topic.
I absolutely completely agree with that, Phil. And I think, you touched on AI there. And of course, AI is such a big topic for everybody at the moment. But certainly what I'm seeing is that people are searching for more humanity and more of those human moments, and getting quite irritated if they're seeing lots of stuff that they're just recognizing as being AI generated without any thought or any of that human connection coming through. And you mentioned there as well about that availability as a leader. And I guess that links back to what we were talking about before in terms of, not allowing your diary to run you, but actually taking control of your diary so that you can be available in the important moments, which I do see leaders struggling with. They know they need to be available, but their diaries are just so ridiculously packed that they almost can't be. So I found that a really profound insight as well.
Thank you. I always love that saying, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. I just always love that because it makes you think. And I also love the saying, what does your diary say about you? About your statement of intent, about what you want to do. And the things that are important to me are the long-term sustainability of the company. And in that, I have a little formula that I work, Lois, which is my own little formula, which is strategy plus execution multiplied by culture, divided by distraction, dysfunction, and disalignment. So think of it as an equation that you write in your maths class in your book. So strategy plus.
I was never good at equations, but I like this one. Yeah,
me neither. But I run the business on that simple little equation, which is you get your strategy right, get your execution right, and your culture becomes the multiplier, the people. It's why it's a multiplication, not an add. That accelerates you, and that sometimes makes the difference between when you're doing diagnostics of why some companies aren't performing versus others. They might have the strategy wrong, but the execution, the people, they might have so you can quickly point to what bit's going wrong. And culture quite often can be one of the really big things that's stopping a company. So you look below the line and go, the 3 Ds: distraction, dysfunction, disalignment. So how are you prioritizing your diary to accelerate the top and to make sure that you're minimizing the bottom? Because when you're not minimizing what's going on the bottom, distraction, dysfunction, disalignment. Am I giving too many priorities? Distraction. Dysfunction. Unfortunately, human beings, the nature of human beings is we will always be dysfunctional. That's the nature of being human, is we're just dysfunctional humans. That's it. So put us into a big organization. You'll never find a perfect culture. You won't, because they just don't exist, because people are people. They have their own stuff. They bring stuff to work, personality clashes, all of these sorts of things. The neurodiversity, different thinking types, different problem approaches, biases, everything. Now, you're dealing with all of that in the distraction bucket. And the disalignment is where you have not communicated clearly, what your expectations are. People feel that, okay, well, I'll just go and create my own. So you then get culture within culture within culture within culture as teams wrap up. And then you get this, again, disalignment that actually your culture's not really working. So your C above, multiplied by culture, is if you're not working those bottom pieces to minimize things, you end up with a lot of inertia. You spend a lot of your time dealing with petty squabbles, departmental clashes over KPIs, let's say, that are incompatible, cross-cultural problems, communication problems, because we've gone asynchronous, and so someone's sent a Teams message and someone took it the wrong way, and then there's passive aggressiveness, and we're trying to work out what's going on. And running a business can be exhausting because fundamentally you are trying as much as you can to get people to work together effectively. And that is just the most difficult thing to do. And I can remember saying that to our IIP consultant many years ago, because we were the first company in the world to get Invest in People Platinum 4 times in a row. I was very proud of that. And when you say something to that externally, they go, wow, you must be totally perfect. And I'm like, no, we are not perfect. And in fact, I came up with this one-liner, Lois, which is all organizations are dysfunctional. Organizations that are more successful manage their dysfunction more successfully.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So, and
I become good at managing dysfunction, minimizing it. It doesn't exist. It still does, but we just do a better job at managing it, perhaps, than some other organization.
Yeah. And actually, as you say, dysfunction is part of being human.
Yeah.
So, the flip side of dysfunction is creativity and different perspectives and people just bringing different stuff that actually is so important as well. But I think that one-liner is actually key, because I do see so many leaders searching for that perfect culture and blaming themselves if it doesn't exist, rather than acknowledging what you just said, that we need to manage it rather than expect it to go away.
Yeah. And the pursuit of perfection is an endless task. And I think you've got to find a place where, and I think we found our point, which was when is good enough good enough? And when do we stop comparing against other people? Because believe it or not, we're quite an operational business here. Lois, we've got sales and supply chain and service, bid management, everything's operational. So you end up getting a lot of operational mindsets, in Myers-Briggs terms, or maybe a lot of TJ style thinkers. And as a result, you can very, very quickly get an organizational bias growing, just creeping in. And what you're continually trying to do in any organization is to design out bias as much as you possibly can, and to try and have a sort of blend of everything in order that you've got the sort of the perfect casserole boiling away all the time to perform over the long term. But that's a really difficult job to do, and it takes continual maintenance and investment. And this is back to out on in, and diary prioritization is I have a direct line on culture to me directly from our responsible director, which we call organizational development. And the two of us work on the whole thing together because I'm a firm belief that you can't outsource your culture to people. You have to own it. You have to sort of live it. You have to be continually storytelling. You have to be that person that actually says, well, I'm expecting that of you. Do I do it? And can you hold me up to say that, yeah, he does that too. So I think those things are really important.
I'm very mindful of time. Thank you so much for all of that, Phil. Couple of things just before we close. One is that I know that you do a lot of leadership conference speaking. What's the one theme that you find coming up most commonly? When people are asking you about things, what's coming up most commonly at the moment?
Yeah, I've done quite a lot of senior leadership team away days, Lois. They might ask you, might be a small leadership team of 20 people, something like that. And I think the number one thing that I see a lot of the time is just people are drowning in trying to get things done. And I guess if we look at the economic environment we've all traded within, maybe for the last 10 years or more, there's not really a lot of economic growth in the marketplace. And as a result, organizations to some degree have been a bit thinned out. And as a result, people have been asked to do more with less, and particularly people in middle and senior management. They are, struggling with workloads. And as a result, they do end up in this sort of more below my equation, distraction, dysfunction, disalignment than anything else. So when they get to their away day, they're mentally saturated. And even when they're there, they're trying to kind of get them to detach from, I need to be checking my emails every 2 minutes, and my team's tech is orange. Oh my goodness, what people think of me, and all these sorts of things. Where actually, what we should be thinking about, my cousin sent me a great book recently just called Deep Work. And that is really, I guess, epitomizing the one thing you must be doing right now is allocating time for deep work, where you can do deep thinking and thinking about the future and not just surviving day to day. But I think for a lot of leadership teams, they don't think they have that permission to exhale, to to say I'm not available for a couple of days because I'm just needing to think, and I just need to decompress and kind of get things a bit organized. And I need to come back out of this feeling that I've got of overwhelm. And I just need to kind of get everything sorted again so that I can come back and go, okay, I'm back. I'm ready to be effective again. And I don't think, or I'm seeing that it's very difficult for a lot of leaders to find that time.
I see that too, 100%. And it's the work that I do with a lot of leaders is how you actually do that on a practical level.
Yeah. Can I just one thing? Lois, a very, very quick point. So a word I love is alacrity, which basically means a happy state of readiness. So how can we make people more happy, but in a state of readiness to deal with anything? This is linked back to where I started, navigating uncertainty. So I'm continually thinking about our own alacrity here. And a small definition of what happiness is from another author I really like, Brad Stulberg, American guy, that happiness is simply your expectations minus your reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I would certainly endorse that, because I do see people, and gosh, I've been there myself many times, where the expectation is always so high that you constantly feel a sense of failure.
Yeah.
And so reconciling that and coming to some kind of equilibrium with that is so important.
Yeah. I think it's the most leveling statement, because what you can inquire on then is, well, what are your expectations? And then what reality are we experiencing? Because that will create either a very close alignment or a very close disalignment. So when you're going, beneath my equation, that inquiry of, okay, where are we on the alacrity and happiness scale? When you know those things, it can be very quick. You can be quick to diagnose where things are going wrong.
Yeah. And finally, if you were to give one piece of advice to people who are coming into leadership now, what would it be?
I'm not allowed to say don't, am I, Lois?
Well, you can if you want.
No, I would say, I used the term earlier about mastery. Okay, and I want to end on that term because I think that's where it's at. Because leadership is not just what you do, it's how you do it, right? How you do it. And what you do is the mastery of the subject matter. How you do it is the mastery of self. And what I realized was that my true career and my own happiness never took off until I had that realization that I needed to invest in my personal growth more than my professional achievements. Because I worked with a psychologist back in the early 2000s, a business psychologist, and I had my grounding moment where I realized there was a gaping hole between how good I thought I was and how other people thought how good I was. Those two things were totally disaligned. And the gap was I was just so goal orientated that I forgot the people bit of it. And so what I went away to do then is build on the people bit of it. And then I broke through in my career to then achieve everything that I wanted to achieve. But I was stuck revving out in sixth gear at 7,000 revs, wondering why I couldn't get any better. That was the issue.
Thank you. Oh, thanks so much for sharing that, and everything else you've shared today, Phil. That's been so great to hear you speak about these things. So, if people want to get in touch with you, to have more conversations or to ask for your help in maybe senior team away days or speaking, where would they find you?
Yeah, best place to always find me is just look for me on LinkedIn, Phil Jones 40. You should find me. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we'll close there. Thank you again so much for today, Phil. That's been great. And so many nuggets there that I know our listeners will be really find very, very valuable.
Thank you.